Very recently, the third part of Limbus Company's Canto 8 has come out, and with it came the third part of the Season 6 Limbus Pass. The levels that were unlocked provide the player with a bunch of useful resources, as well as multiple cosmetic items. But as always, the most interesting part of the final stretch of every new Limbus Pass is the duo of WoW level ego skills that gets unlocked. The skills unlocked this time around are tiers of the Tarnished Blood Sinclair and Honglu, and these skills are very unique and interesting, as they play around the familiar concept of sacrifice, but instead of targeting allies, tiers of the Tarnished Blood trade the lives of their users for more damage. This creates a very interesting dynamic of whittling down a sinner's health in order to use a strong skill, but a question still remains: how good are the two new ego skills actually? In today's video, I aim to answer that question by first looking at the skills themselves and then checking out their performance in combat, mostly in the Rapture team. However, before we do that, I have a very important announcement for you. June has begun once again, folks. Pride Month has returned, and with it, Absolute Pride Resonance. For the uninitiated, last year a group of your favorite Project Moon creators came together to form a group to donate to Outright International, a charity organization meant to help LGBTQIA+ people across the globe. And you know what? APR is going back around for Lab 2. And this time the project has gotten a lot bigger. You may recognize a few names from last year, such as Tsunul, Wellwader and Archangela, but this time around some more people have been added, such as Tonrep, Kaskzuk, as well as me at some point. And plenty more you'll have to wait and see. We've also got a slew of new events and some returning ones going on throughout the month of June, as well as plenty of donation goals that are both exciting and terrifying. The festivities will begin once again on June 1st for the Absolute Pride Resonance 2. Absoluter Prider Resonancer. And after this very important announcement, I also want to ask you to subscribe. That's it, just do that. Now let's get back to the new egos. We'll go over these ego skills one by one, starting with Sinclair and then moving on to Honglu. Tears of the Tarnished Blood Sinclair is a 2-coin WoW level Gluttony ego skill that rolls up to 26 with full conditionals up, and has an attack weight of 5. The skill interacts with two unique effects: Flower Burying Pin and Denial. So before looking at the skill itself, let's check those effects out. Flower Burying Pin stacks up to 20, and its stack is increased by 1 at turn end or when Sinclair is hit. Sinclair gains 1 offense level per 5 stacks of this effect, and when he dies, he inflicts gluttony damage equal to the stack of Pin and inflicts 5 Rapture. The effect expires upon death or retreat. Denial is an effect that allows Sinclair's HP to not go below 1 for 1 turn, and also allows him to recover from stagger due to damage. Whenever the effect activates, Sinclair dies at turn end, and he also loses the effect on death, retreat or turn end. Now that we're done with the effects, let's look at the skill itself. Tears of the Tarnished Blood Sinclair gains 1 coin power for every 6 pins on self, and gains Denial at combat start. Before attack, Sinclair gains pins equal to Gluttony Resonance, with a cap of 5. He then takes damage equal to double his stack of Flower Burying Pins. This effect cannot stagger Sinclair, and instead removes the stagger threshold that it crosses. And as usual for WoW skills, Sinclair loses 10 SP at turn end for 3 turns after using the skill. The first coin inflicts 1 Rupture count, and the second one deals more damage based on Sinclair's missing health, inflicts Rupture, and if its user is at 30% HP or less, or has 20 pins, the coin is reused, dealing extra damage on reuse while also consuming all of Sinclair's HP, killing him at turn end. The corrosion variant of the skill only costs 20 SP, gets negative coins, more offense level, more attack weight, and, crucially, more flower burying pin gain. Outside of this, the effects are pretty much the same. As for the skill's passive, Sinclair gets Crying Tears, which is a passive that heals 5 SP on Sinclair at turn end if he gets a negative effect or loses HP or SP. Also, once an ally unit, including Sinclair, dies, all enemies are inflicted with 1 fragile next turn once per turn. And that's about it for the actual skill. Now, how do you use it? Well, first of all, you will need to run Sinclair on field in Rupture to even get to use Tears of the Tarnished Blood. Now, the talisman nerfs actually make that less of a sin than it was before, but you're still stuck with Deviant Sinclair on your team if you want to use the skill. But outside of that little issue, the ego is pretty good. Its cost is quite low for its level, especially considering that it mostly requires Gluttony, which is a resource that Rupture generates a ton of. On top of this, the sanity cost of the ego is quite low as well. The Awakening version costs a total of 40, which is the usual cost for an ego like this. But the corrosion only costs 20, meaning Sinclair will never be corroding at minus 45 SP from using this ego. The overall low cost of this ego makes it easily spammable, and I believe that's by design, as the skill gets reused with a bonus damage amp if it's used at 20 pin stacks, and those stacks are generated extremely slowly on their own, meaning to get the big reuse, you will need to use the skill multiple times. And that's exactly what you should be doing with Tears of the Tarnished Blood Sinclair. I recommend going for the corrosion variant over the Awakening, as it can give you twice the amount of flower burying pins for only 1.5 times the cost, making it a more worthwhile trade-off. It also hits more enemies and deals slightly more damage if you hit both tails, making it simply the superior version of the skill. But is the skill good? I would say yes. It's a wave clearing skill on a team that can only really struggle with human encounters, that strongly synergizes with Rupture's love for Gluttony Resonance. Also, as much as I love to hate on Deviant Sinclair, just like a lot of people do to be honest, he's actually a pretty good pickup in human encounters. He's got half and half conditionals, just like the Heishos, and can actually reach max power without any rupture on the enemy. With Sinclair actually being good against enemy groups and the ego being good in that scenario as well, while also synergizing with Deviant, there kind of isn't a reason not to run it. Even if you dislike Deviant Sinclair, the ego kills him after 2 corrosions anyways, so you can derive pleasure from killing all the enemies and your least favorite identity at the same time. Against bosses, however, Tears of the Tarnished Blood can actually be actively detrimental if you're trying to maximize its efficiency, as using it too early can result in you deactivating the passive ability of Mao Faust, who is a completely overpowered identity that somehow avoided nerfs, and should be the center of your team at all times when facing just one enemy. Also, the damage of the skill when only hitting one enemy is not particularly notable, meaning that there are better ego skills to spend your resources on. And of course, the problem of Sinclair's identities comes up as well, making the skill even less likely to be useful on bosses. Overall, Tears of the Tarnished Blood Sinclair is a good AoE damage dealing ego skill that synergizes well with Deviant Sinclair, and can easily clear your path in human encounters with its high spammability and nuke potential. On bosses it's much less useful, but a future Season 6 Sinclair Rupture identity might change that, if it has any kind of death-related mechanic. Now that we're done with Sinclair, let's move on to Honglu's season highlight ego skill. Tears of the Tarnished Blood Honglu is a 1-coin Gluttony WoW level ego skill with a base power of 20 and a 10 power negative coin. This skill is tied to 2 effects just like Sinclair's ego, but the effects are very different. Before checking out the skill itself, let's take a look at these effects. Flower Burying Wedge has a base stack of 0 and a max stack of 3. The effect makes all coins on Honglu's leftmost skill on the dashboard become unbreakable. Also, at turn start, Honglu gets 2 offense level up and 2 defense level down. At 3 stacks, Wedge also inflicts 1 Tarnished Blood on Honglu at turn start, once per encounter. The stack is increased by 1 at turn end, and cannot be raised in any way except death. As usual, Wedge expires on death or retreat. All of this is only 1/2 of the effect, as when Honglu takes damage that would bring his HP down to 0, he lives at 1 HP instead, and uses the end version of the ego skill at turn end. When that skill is used, all stacks of Flower Burying Wedge are removed. If the damage that would kill Honglu is dealt to him at turn end, he lives and uses the end next turn based on his speed. The second effect tied to this ego skill is Tarnished Blood, which is inflicted by 3 stacks of Wedge. This effect simply forces Honglu to take damage based on its stack at turn end, and caps out at 5 stacks, which is the point where it also instantly takes all of Honglu's HP, forcing him to use the end. Its stack is increased at every turn end. Now that we're done with the very complex unique effects, let's get back to the skill itself. The Inception version of it is unclashable, ignores enemy defensive skills, and does not even hit an enemy. Instead, the skill makes Honglu take damage by its final power, and gives him 1 stack of Flower Burying Wedge after attack. But of course, everyone here is interested in the end version of the skill, which is much more impressive. Tears of the Tarnished Blood The End is a 4-coin ego skill that rolls up to 39 with all conditionals fulfilled, does not consume resources, and is also unclashable. The skill reaches 10 attack weight. It deals extra damage based on Wedge and Tarnished Blood on Honglu, gains coin power for Rupture on the main target, and gains attack weight and base power based on stacks of Tarnished Blood after the second. After attack, Honglu loses all of his unique effects and dies. The first coin of the skill inflicts 3 Rupture count, while the rest inflict 2 Rupture each. As for the skill's Corrosion variant, it's more similar to the End than the Inception, as it has 4 coins and high attack weight. The skill gets pretty low base power and negative coins, but at least they're unbreakable. Before attack, the skill gets extra attack weight based on the highest resonance, reaching up to 9 weight at 6 resonance. Also, the skill loses 2 base power for every cracked coin before attack, up to -8. After attack, Honglu gains 1 stack of Flower Burying Wedge. The coins of the skill are the same as on the end version, but they inflict 1 less of everything. As for the effect's passive, Project Moon have decided not to go easy on poor Limbus players, and dumped a whole page of text on our screens. If Honglu defeats an enemy with an attack or counter skill, he gains 1 haste, and all allies get 1 damage up to the damage type and affinity of the skill used to kill the enemy. All enemies, on the other hand, are inflicted with 1 attack power down next turn. All of this is applied once per turn. When Honglu dies, all of his allies get 1 gluttony and pierce damage up, and all enemies are inflicted with 1 attack power down once again. All of this also procs once per turn, but it's also attached to Honglu's death, so that was expected. Phew, now we're done with the skill. That certainly took a while. So, let's talk about using it. First of all, while Sinclair's ego skill is pretty cheap, Honglu's version is somehow even cheaper. It only requires 7 resources, meaning you can easily use it on the second turn in 7 Sinner encounters, or if you use Maofaust's assist defense to get an extra gluttony resource in 6 Sinner encounters. Its sanity cost is also very low, only using up 10 SP for the Awakening version and 25 for the Corrosion. However, even though the low cost makes Sinclair's Tears of the Tarnished Blood spammable, this time around it only serves to allow you to use the ego earlier, as spamming it is not what you want to be doing. After the ego is used once, Honglu's fate is sealed. He will slowly gain stacks of Wedge, and then Tarnished Blood, which will eventually kill him. The longer he takes to die after using the skill, the stronger the eventual end version will be, as Honglu will get more stacks of the effects that the skill scales with. However, getting the strongest hit is not always what you should strive for, as using the skill at the correct timing can make all the difference. To use the skill earlier, Honglu has to die, so either you allow him to get rushed down by enemies in a focused encounter, or you use an ally targeting ego skill like Fell Bullet to get Honglu to 1 HP so he can use his ego sooner. If you want to let the ego scale up to its max power, you will need to heal Honglu through the damage of Tarnished Blood, so that he doesn't blow his load early after losing all of his health. Timing is definitely the biggest issue with this skill, but once you've got it down, you get access to one of the strongest skills in the game. Tears of the Tarnished Blood The End deals an incredible amount of damage to a lot of enemies at once, clearing out waves with ease. However, the single target damage of the skill is also quite high, so it can be used anywhere. As for synergies, this skill has a very major one. If the passive of Dimension Shredder Honglu is up, when the end is being used, Honglu can stay alive even after using his nuke, and even potentially go again. This combo is not only really fun, but also quite good, as 2 usages of the end are better than 1. It will also become even more notable once Honglu gets his seasonal identity, as it will most likely be very strong, meaning that allowing that identity to persist on the field even after nuking everyone down would be quite useful. Of course, this part is pure speculation, but I imagine this is exactly how it will play out. Also, Dimension Shredder is pretty cheap in current Rapture, so you can easily get access to it after Honglu has used the Inception. But is the ego good overall? I'd say yes, but not everywhere. Unlike Sinclair, who gets instant value from using his skill at least once, Honglu is extremely reliant on making the end go through. This can take a lot of time, as if the enemy team is not focusing down Honglu for no reason, you will need to wait until Tarnished Blood brings him down to 1 HP instead. This is to say that the skill won't be particularly helpful in very short encounters, as it will most likely not go through. However, the one part of the game where it shines is Refraction Railway Line 5. Considering that this mode is composed of both boss fights and multi-target encounters, and also has resource carryover, as well as long sections, it's the perfect place to use Tears of the Tarnished Blood. Strong Rapture identities can deal with bosses by utilizing their status effect, while Honglu can nuke down a wave of enemies that comes later in the section, by using the Inception on turn 1 with the carried over resources. In that mode, the skill is absolutely fast enough to do whatever you want with it. And honestly, the same goes for Sinclair, who is also very useful in the Refraction Railway. With this, my overview of the Tears of the Tarnished Blood EGO set has come to an end. The two new skills have a lot of potential and can deal tons of damage. However, both of the egos require setup and timing to get the most out of them, so you will need to plan ahead to get maximum value. I imagine these skills will only get stronger as we get Rapture identities for the respective sinners, but we'll have to wait and see. As always, if you disagree or have something to add, feel free to leave a comment below and I will read all of them. If you enjoyed the video at any point, leave a like to let me know, and if you want to see more content like this, consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.